Welcome to The Whole Steward, the holistic approach to wealth from a Christian worldview. I'm your host, Andrew Stanton, and I'm glad you've joined. Why do we see household formation being delayed later and later in life? Marriage is delayed now to a median age of over 30 for men and 28 for women. As far as we know, this is the highest it's ever been, at least for millennia. Why is that, and what can be done about it? Today on The Whole Steward. Well, this is episode number 30, and I'm so thankful you're listening. You know who you are, and I appreciate it. Please help us get the word out for The Whole Steward. It's a lot of work. I enjoy it, and I hope you find it helpful. So if you find it helpful, please share it with a friend. Today, we want to look at what is this critical cultural phenomenon that we've been witnessing over the last, about 50 to 70 years now of a delayed marriage age. Now, on The Whole Steward, we talk about many different things, all the different forms of capital under our care. As you know, there are 9 forms of capital, which is spiritual, physical, intellectual, experiential, social, cultural, material, financial, and time. The topic today, there's some overlap between cultural and relational capital. We're really going to focus on those areas today and how we are, at least the influence of the church on the culture, how we are stewards of this particular aspect of our culture. Now, there are many things that could be said about this from a biblical worldview, which we'll just look at a few today. Why is it that young men, young women are delaying marriage more and more now? They're delaying marriage past all the ages that even the highest age in recent history, it's delayed way past that now. And in many cases, it doesn't even happen. We'll look at that in a bit. But what I want to call your attention to is the call to wisdom and why wisdom is so important. We talk about finances sometimes on the show. We talk about some of the other forms of capital. Today, we will see how wisdom is far more precious than any of those other things. And listen to the call of wisdom. Proverbs 8, 1-11. Does not wisdom call? Does not understanding raise her voice? On the heights, beside the way, at the crossroads she takes her stand, beside the gates, in front of the town, at the entrance of the portals she cries aloud, "To you, O men, I call, and my cry is to the children of man." O simple ones, learn prudence. O fools, learn sense. Hear, for I will speak noble things, and from my lips will come what is right. From my mouth will utter truth. Wickedness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are righteous. There is nothing twisted or crooked in them. They are all straight to him who understands, and right to those who find knowledge. Take my instruction instead of silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is better than jewels, and all that you may desire cannot compare with her. So you see, wisdom calls to us and is to be desired far above even choice gold, silver, jewels, anything that you could possibly desire in this life. Wisdom is better. So let's talk about wisdom for a second. One of the calls of Scripture to Timothy by the Apostle Paul is 2 Timothy 2:22. Quote, "So flee youthful passions and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace, along with those who call on the Lord from a pure heart." End quote. There is probably the temptation for the youth to continue to pursue youthful passions. And the call, specifically to Timothy and by extension, those who would want to be righteous and holy, is to flee youthful passions and to pursue righteousness. Now remember, the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. If you fear the Lord, you obey his commands. This is a call to all of us, really, to flee youthful passions. Now, as men grow older, it seems as though many men would like to still pursue youthful passions, but we need to guard our hearts against that and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace instead, along with all those who call on the Lord from a pure heart. Now, if you are steeped in youthful passions, I venture to say you are not going along with those who call on God from a pure heart. So let's look at just a little bit of history now of marriage. Why is it that young boys might be delaying marriage? Young girls are delaying marriage. Well, I have a theory for you. So let's look at some history and some statistics. In ancient times, marriage could occur around the time of puberty for girls and boys. So it was basically slightly earlier for girls because that's the way of biology, and a little bit later for boys, but it was ultimately right around puberty. It's possible that this continued all the way through the Middle Ages and the medieval times, although there is some evidence that maybe most marriages might have taken place a little bit later than that, around the early 20s or late teens. And then we see a trend back down in age in the baby boom. Now, I don't know exactly why this is. There's many theories, but nonetheless, the fact is that during the baby boom of the 1950s, marriage started to decline in the age of which young women, young men got married was declining back down to around age 20 for the average age. It wasn't really much lower than that. It was about age 20, and certainly the baby boom has all the reasons that we know why it was called a baby boom. Now, since that point, though, the number has climbed steadily. And now we find ourselves in a position where, as you heard earlier, the average age for men is over 30 years old for marriage, and for women, it's around 28 years old. This is a trend that is trending up and doesn't really show any sign of slowing. And I know young women, young men who are ready to be married or feel that they are ready to be married, and they wonder, why is there nobody to marry? Why are young men in particular delaying this sacred union for so long? And some are completely not participating at all. So here's my theory. Young men, back in the day, in order to participate in the privileges of being a man, were required to act with the responsibilities of a man. And now, increasingly in our society, that requirement is being dismissed. It's being rendered invalid. See, back in the day, there was a 14-year-old young man who already knew how to till a field, build his house, and he was ready to go pick up a spear and stand on the front line. This, my friend, is a man, and thus he was given the privileges of a man. Did he show the responsibility? Well, some father would be willing to give his daughter in marriage to a young man who showed that responsibility. Now, certainly, if he was still in the sandbox playing with Tonka trucks, the father would not say, "Yes, young man, here's my daughter." The young man must show the responsibility of a man to be given the privilege. Society required it. The culture required it. The fathers required it. And that's why boys were always longing to go with their fathers, for example. Dad, take me with you hunting. Dad, I want to learn the business. I want to learn alongside you. I want to be a big boy. I want to be a man. They ultimately understood that they needed to have the responsibilities of a man in order to have the privileges of a man. But here's the theory. Our society today does not require that. Although I think they should, they don't. Here's where we're at today. Boys and girls gain the privileges of men and women without the responsibilities. And here's what I mean. For example, we teach our youth sex education, safe participation, quote unquote, without the commitment of marriage. There's no requirement of marriage here in this education. It's just, here it is. Go and do thus. Youthful lusts are encouraged, and yet marriage is considered optional or severely delayed or not required at all. Fornication is pervasive in our culture, and it's even expected now of young people outside of marriage. It really is. Living with your girlfriend or your boyfriend is so common that it's just, that of course that's happening. And how do you know if you want to spend your whole life with her or you won't be with her before marriage? It's ludicrous. There was a time where two young people started life together and built a life together from a young age. Whereas now people are building their life and then maybe getting around to coming together later in the marriage commitment. This institution created by God at the very beginning of creation is held in high esteem throughout all of Scripture, and we have perverted that. And thus you see the devaluing of the sacred union for something that is not wise. See, as we read in the proverb earlier, wisdom leads to righteousness. And to gain wisdom is to be gaining something better than silver, better than fine gold. It is to be sought after. The wisdom that we find in the Bible, directly from God, should not be dismissed. And yet that's what our culture is doing. We're losing it. So, Christian, non-Christian alike, if you're hearing this, hold marriage in high esteem. Require the responsibilities of a man before the privileges are granted. And that will be the incentive for young men and young women to grow up. We wouldn't have as many boys who are 30 years old still playing video games, but not married and yet gaining the privileges of a man. This is folly, and it ought not to be. I'll leave this topic with this. Hebrews 13:4. Let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled. For God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous. You see, God will judge. There is a day coming, a day of reckoning, a day of judgment, and God is a righteous judge. Let's fight for what's sacred. Let's resolve to be different. Let's resolve with our children and with yourself if you're not married, or you're single and thinking about becoming either married or having children. Resolve to hold marriage in high esteem and to require the responsibility of an adult, whether man or woman, prior to the privileges of said man or woman. And then you will see great strides in holiness and righteousness and what is expected of our society. It will help with so many aspects of life, including financial. Wisdom is to be prized far above gold, silver, anything you might desire can't be compared with her. Now, over the weekend, I saw a movie in the theater with my wife, Anna, and some friends. We don't usually go to the theater. We don't find much there of value. But I have to tell you that we did find The Sound of Freedom, which is the movie we saw, to be very interesting and valuable. We read up on it a little bit. They did dramatize it a bit for the screenplay, but the underlying story is still based on a true story, and it's good. One thing that I'm very excited about, I want to share with you the box office numbers of the movies right now, and I'm very encouraged by what I see. So if you look at IMDb, the top movie right now is Barbie. Unfortunately, that's only been released for 1 week, and it's doing very, very well at 188 million total so far. Next comes Oppenheimer, which is at 95 million, and it's only been released for 1 week as well. I think that may be somewhat of a good movie. I'm not sure. I heard what it was about, but I have not seen it. Like I said, I really don't go to movies very often. But coming in at number 3 is Sound of Freedom. And let me tell you something. I did not find it, and don't find movies like this to be very entertaining, but they're very instructive and appropriate, and it comes in at number 3 at 128 million at the box office. So if you don't know anything about The Sound of Freedom or Tim Ballard, I highly encourage you, check it out. He runs the Underground Railroad, and it's all about rescuing the children from the sex traffickers. It is a very important work. Highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, and you can still find a theater where it is, go and watch it. It comes in ahead of Mission Impossible at the box office. I mean, imagine that. I'm personally pleased to see that. And I don't know about you, but it also comes in ahead of Indiana Jones and some of the other movies, which I don't know really anything about. Apparently there's a Transformers movie and Spider-Man. Check it out, Sound of Freedom, the story of Tim Ballard and the Underground Railroad. And you should really look into his work. If you don't know anything about it, it's very useful. That's all I have for today. I hope you found it helpful. Now, I want to hear from you. What is your theory on the delayed age of marriage? And what do you think is a possible solution to the problem that marriage is being delayed and or not even occurring at all? Do you find marriage to be an important institution, or could you just leave it by the wayside and be fine with it? I want to hear from you. Give me your thoughts. letters@thewholesteward.com. And until next week, now that you know more, go out and grow more.
All content on The Whole Steward is for informational purposes only and must not be considered personal, professional, tax, or legal advice. Please consult an appropriate professional for individualized advice. Though we do our best to bring you reliable information, we make no guarantee on its accuracy, so you must rely on your own due diligence to draw your own conclusions. The views expressed by guests on the show are their own and may not represent that of the host. Please visit our website for complete terms and conditions.
Thanks for joining us today for the holistic approach to wealth from a Christian worldview. This show is brought to you by thewholesteward.com.